BORTLE here, back from the LCS 10 event of the online format. That's right, the Team 3v3 LCS event. We have here the champions, the first place winners. So please introduce yourselves to the world.
Hey guys, I'm Gabriel Nats.
Hey, I'm Christian Thomas.
Oh, we won with I was with Paulo Gonçalves, the with Team Fala Galera.
Okay, cool. Before we start the actual deck profiles, would you guys like to do some shoutouts?
Yeah, for sure. I would like to shout out to my teammate, of course, Paulo and Gabriel, and then also shout outs to everyone in RAF who tested with me for this event, and shout outs to my team, Eman Games.
Without further ado, Christian, would you please take away with your deck profile?
Yeah, so like I said, we decided to play Eldlich Zoodiac as our two other decks for this team, and so I will start with the hand traps in this deck because this was one of the most appealing factors for this deck. It's the reason that you can play 15 hand traps, because those give you an edge against the other combo decks, because that's something combo can't do. Like usually most virtual lists playing like 9 hand traps, Drytron plays like 3 to 6, but in this deck you have 15, so that's really helpful against all the combo decks when you're going second. So yeah, we decided to play the most generic ones that hit both Virtual White and Drytron, so obviously 3 Ash, 3 Maester, 3 Bell, 3 Crow, and 3 Droll. I guess what's kind of interesting is that there's no Nibiru here, and there's a couple reasons for that. So I think Nibiru is actually not that good against Virtual World, especially not in this deck, because usually when you Nibiru them, they already started playing, right? And if that happens, then they will already have a spell engrave for next turn. Usually they will have the level 9 Shen Shen engrave, which is a resource for next turn. The trap is also live, and they will also get a GG add back in the end phase. So I think if you Nibiru them, it's not even that good for you, because your deck pretty much loses to the trap and they will have a lot of follow-up play. So that's why we thought Meister was a lot better, because it also stops every 2-card combo. But difference is, against the 2-card combos, when you have Meister, they would usually just pass because there's nothing they can do. If you have Nibiru against the 2-card combos, then, like I said, they would end on a lot of follow-up and the live trap. Against the 3-card combos, sure, Meister isn't enough to stop them, but Nibiru isn't either, because they can play around it by using the rank 3, the number 75, or they can just do the double VFD play. I guess the other interesting hand trap is that we play Droll, which is not really used in a control deck like that, but we felt that it was fine because the game plan was like to just Droll Drytron, and then when you have like one Zoo going second, you could end up on a 6 material Zeus with maybe 1 or 2 more interactions, and that's usually enough to win the game. So we felt that just stopping them and not taking every resource with Droll was fine here. And then yeah, we played 10 Zeus. We played 2 Four Blades, 1 Bunny Blast, 1 Riptail, 1 Ram, 1 Red Pier, 1 Barrage, and 3 Tanky. I think it's pretty standard. Like, you could think about playing more Bunny Blast because it's pretty good against the Virtual World spell, against the Kinglong. But we thought that the other Zeus were also needed. So, like, you have some utility with playing 1 Riptail and 1 Red and 1 Ram. And the cool thing about Red is also that you can do a play with Red, and that's you can normally summon the Red, send the Bunny Blast, and then you can either decide to equip the Bunny Blast to the Trident with Tiger Mortar to give you protection from Kinglong. Or the other play is, if you need a Zeus follow-up play, you could Charcanine the Bunny Blast back to your field, and then you stride to pop it, and then the Bunny Blast could add the Red Pier from the graveyard to the hand, and that way, even if the Trident dies, you will have a Zoo for the next turn to make a Zeus there. So that was also pretty good. And then we played some Eldlich cards as well. I think it's also pretty standard. Like, we played 3 lands, 1 Black Awakening, and then 3 of each of the golden land cards, 3 Sanguine and Double Lord. Double Lord was something I would have liked to cut prior to the tournament, because it's obviously one of the dead draws in this deck. Like, it doesn't really do anything unless you have another Eldlich card with it, and even then you much rather draw another card, to be honest. But in the end, we still decided to play 2 because there's some issues with only playing 1 Lord. One of them is against the mirror matches. If your 1 Lord gets banished, you pretty much just lose the game, because your Eldlich engine is just dead. And then also Virtual World has the level 9 sync with the Shen Shen, which can also banish the Lord technically, and then you would also just lose the game. So we thought that 2 Lord was just safer, but in hindsight, I feel like I feel like we should have cut it a lot, because I drew it a lot this tournament, and I drew it in matchups where resided the second lot anyway, which is like Drytron or Dragon Link, other Emancipators. Like those are decks that can't really banish lots, so you don't really need a second one, and that's why I think it was probably better to just play one lot. So for the side deck, we decided some more impactful hand traps. Like those are hand traps that are really impactful against the meta decks, but hand traps you can't main because they usually only cover one deck. So in case of Gamma, you can't main it because obviously it's only good going second, but we side Gamma versus both Virtual World and against Drytron. And then we played 3 Cycle Reader, which is obviously insane against Drytron. I think Cycle Reader and Droll are the 2 main reasons why I didn't like playing Drytron in this tournament, because I felt like everyone was either maining Droll or siding Droll and then also siding Cycle Reader. And those 6 hand traps are just really, really impactful against Drytron. Then we also played Freelancia, which is another uncommon hand trap to use in a control deck like this, but it's pretty much the same reason like Droll. So the game plan was here as well to stand by to use the Lancia against Virtual World, and then usually they really couldn't play through that because I think Lancia is the best hand trap against Virtual World because it has the highest likelihood of preventing them from making VFD. The other reason why Lancia is so good is that the trap is also live, the trap is dead. And the trap is usually pretty good against this deck because it just pops your normal Samsu. So if Chucha is dead, then you could just do the 6 Materia Zeus play, and that would usually be enough as well. That's why we felt Lancia was also pretty good. Then we played 2 Cosmics, which was for the backrow decks, so pretty much the Eldlich mirrors. But we also decided to side it against Virtual World, both going second and going first, because it's a good spot removal. It can banish the King Long when they try to negate the Trident, and going second it's also pretty huge because it can negate the Chucha. And I think if you remove Chucha from field and resolve your Zeus play, then you're pretty much set up to win. And for the last 3 cards in the side deck, we played 2 Arrests and 1 Order. The Arrests were mainly for Drytron, but I also sided them against Dragon Link, but obviously they're really, really good against Drytron. It's just 2 more Droll. Or, I mean, the card is even a better Droll because you can even prevent the first search, and they can't hit it with Duster, they can't hit it with Lightning Storm, they can't hit it with Reboot, which was another good reasoning to play the card. And then for the last side the card, we just played the 1 Order, which was also pretty good against all of the combo matchups.
Earlier you mentioned you wish you only played 1 Eldlich, so what would you have used in place of that?
Yeah, so I would have actually played the exact same list. The only difference would be that I would play 1 Order in the main, because it's just like blowout card going first, like you can just win games of it randomly, and I would still side a second lot because I think it's just needed for those weird back row decks. Like I said, in the Eldlich Mirror you can't really afford to only play with 1 lot. And I also had this list with 1 lot in the main deck, 1 Order, and the other lot in the side deck, but then at 8 a.m. in the morning I decided to change it again. So yeah, in the extra deck, we played some Zeus. I think the non-standard thing is that we only played 1 Borbo. In hindsight, I feel like we should have played 2, but in testing, it just never came up. So that was weird, but I think it was because in testing, like I was mainly only testing against Virtual World and Drytron because I felt like those were the 2 main decks to beat, which turned out to be true. Like I think the most represented deck was Virtual World and then closely followed by Drytron. But the metagame was still somewhat diverse because there were some other decks as well. And against the decks like Eldlich, where you grind more, the second Borbo actually comes up because it gives you the option to still make a 4 Materia Zeus after the first Zeus gets outed. So I wish I would have played the second one. The rest of the Zeus were fine, like we played the 1 Kong, double Mortar, double Charcanine, 1 Trident, then double Zeus, and then of course the Vespernato, which is pretty cool because it gives you an easy option to OTK. When you use Charcanine, you summon, like for example, you can summon a 4-blade back and then you just use the Vespernato to turn the Charcanine into a 2500 attack monster, and then it's easier to OTK with that. And then we played some Link monsters. We played Link Spider to turn in a Golden Land into a Link Spider. That way you can set the Sanguine in the end phase. Then we played 1 Predator Plant Anaconda with no targets, so I guess I have to explain that as well. So when me and Paulo analyzed our testing sessions, we were noticing that a lot of the times you would have like a Scarlet and a Golden Lance, so you use both of them to try to interrupt them. And then versus Drytron, it's really common that they're trying to make a Zeus against you because it's like just a win condition for them. And then there's not really a reason for them to Zeus the Golden Land and the Lord because those two monsters don't do anything because Cerberus doesn't work if the Zeus is in the actual monster zone. And the other reason for them to not Zeus is because if they would Zeus there, we can just use the Golden Lord, send a spell trap from our field to the graveyard, then it's 3,500 attack, and we could attack over the Zeus. So for us, the scenario is pretty bad because the Zeus is still there. It has its fourth sense. So we were looking to find a solution here, and I was looking for a Link 2 that solves the situation. So I was thinking about just playing the Anaconda without any targets, because realistically, when you link off the Golden Lands into a Link Spider and then Link Spider into Lord in the Anaconda, there's not really any scenario in which they wouldn't use Zeus here, because if they don't use Zeus, you summon the Dragoon, and then you just win the game. So in their head, it doesn't make any sense to not use Zeus here, so the Anaconda was just a really easy way for them to use Zeus without us committing any more cards. So I felt like that was a really good solution for this scenario. And then we played some... Unfortunately, I have to say, it didn't come up in this tournament, at least for me not. I think Paulo might have summoned it. I think for me it didn't come up because I was only playing against Ron Drytron the entire tournament, which really surprised me. And that's like the matchup the card was for. But I still would have played it in hindsight again, because to be honest, you have like a lot of space in this extra deck. Like most of the links you just never summon, but now unfortunately the card doesn't work anymore because people know that there's no Dragoon in the deck, so they would just raid with the Zeus. So yeah, for the last three links we played the Vampire Sucker, which also isn't really standard, but the card I think is pretty good because it's a similar scenario. Like when you have a Golden Land and Lord on field, you can just summon the Vampire Sucker, you can reborn one of the monsters, draw one card, then you can just kill the monster, and then usually you set the Sanguine in the end phase of the Golden Land, and standby phase you could use the Sanguine, reborn the Lord from the graveyard and draw another card. And since we were playing 15 hand traps, you have a pretty high chance of drawing a hand trap, or at least one hand trap with the Vampire Sucker. So that was pretty cool. And then we played the one All-Star for the mirror match, which isn't really popular. So there was a card we should probably have cut it for the second Borber, to be honest. The only other deck where All-Star randomly comes up is against Virtual World, because you can take the Gigi or the Lily, because both are Earth monsters and then it's easier to kill them. But I also never made this card. And then for the last card in the extra deck, we played Nightmare Phoenix just for spot removal. So yeah, that pretty much was the deck.
Great explanation, by the way, and I do love the baiting of the Anaconda. So,
yeah, that was a really sick idea, I felt like.
Well, thank you so much for being on the channel today, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot.
And listeners, if you're not a part of BORTLE Nation, sub for BORTLE. It's that easy and it's free. Oh god, yes. BORTLE out.